Enjoy this video and subscribe to Muse Tales. We appreciate you all. I want to let you know up front that there are serious themes in this novel. It addresses infidelity, family dynamics, and the difficulties of becoming a new mother. Now is a good time to quit watching if these subjects bother you. That morning, I was standing in my kitchen, tracing the cold granite countertop with my fingertips. The refrigerator's hum seemed louder than normal. Perhaps it was the silence, perhaps it was the weight of all that had led up to this house, this existence, this moment when everything felt stable at last. Stable didn't exist for me for a long time. Fernando and I were the only ones living in cramped apartments and making the most of every dollar I had. I recall spending evenings on a shabby couch, gazing at unpaid bills, hoping he wouldn't see how terrified I was. He was constantly aware. Fernando could see straight through me even as a youngster. He would get into my lap, put his arms around me, and reassure me that everything would be all right. In some way, it was always that way. João Lucas Fernando became 1 year old, his father passed away. No spectacular departure, no major conflict. Simply a man who disappeared from our lives and never returned. As Fernando grew older, I used to wonder if I would see aspects of him in him, but Fernando was unique. He no longer felt the need to run or the coldness. He remained. We remained. There wasn't much room for us then. We never tried to hide secrets because it was impossible with such thin walls. We discussed everything. Despite the awkwardness of his queries, I responded to them. Additionally, he told me things that most children would keep from their parents. It simply had to be that way. We were dependent on one another, and I believe that bond endured. Even as he grew older and larger, I never felt as though I was losing him. Fernando was at home with me while his pals were out having fun. He enjoyed chatting, hanging around, and cracking jokes that were so awful that they still made me laugh. I also enjoyed it. It was nice to have him around. Perhaps too much at times. That, I believe, is one of the reasons I put myself into exercise. It was more than simply appearances. It was about having the strength to face whatever was ahead. I began lifting weights, running every morning, and at last giving myself the self-care I so richly earned. And it was successful. I felt better. I looked better. People took notice. I took note. Something happened to me because of that confidence. I started to desire more than just survival as a result. I so purchased the spacious, light-filled, and peaceful home. And I made a self-promise not to feel bad about it. I was worthy. Fernando was deserving. I then purchased the hot tub. At first, spending so much money on something so extravagant seemed a little absurd. It felt natural, though, after everything I'd been through. João Lucas placing my order, I discussed it with Fernando. He simply grinned and advised me to indulge myself. I cared, even though I didn't believe he would. I sat in it till my fingertips were pruned the first night it was put up. It felt like evidence that I had succeeded. I couldn't wait to tell Fernando about it by the weekend. I told him it would improve his muscles after the gym, and I kept teasing how amazing it felt. He continued to dismiss it, stating that he was unlikely to utilize it. He eventually said yes when I asked again after supper. That ought to have been it. A brief but enjoyable moment spent with my son. Something dropped off that night when I took off my bikini. It's different but not incorrect. I took longer than usual to examine myself in the mirror. The straps were adjusted. My hair was smoothed. I told myself that the hot tub was the only reason I was eager. To think otherwise was foolish. Still, when I carried our beverages outdoors, my hands felt a little shaky. Despite the breeze, the night felt warmer than usual. Careful not to spill, I carried 2 glasses outside and placed them on the hot tub's edge. As if he had been waiting all his life, Fernando was already resting back against the tub's smooth shell. I hadn't seen him so at ease in a long time. Eyes half-lidded, shoulders relaxed. I responded, pulling at the knot of my robe and slipping out of my sandals, told you it'd be nice. I removed it off my shoulders to show off the black bikini I had already chosen. For a brief moment, his gaze shifted upward before returning to the boiling water. I dipped my toes in and pretended not to notice. I'll admit, he replied, swirling his drink, it's better than I thought. I'm going to stay here. The jets seem to be in the ideal position. Oh, really? Leaning back, I allowed the heat to envelop me as I lowered myself into the water. Well, don't settle in too much. That is my place, and I intend to reclaim it. Raphael, lose if you snooze, he shot back, smiling. Even though I was rolling my eyes, I was grinning. We hadn't sat like this in a long time, simply relaxing, laughing, and conversing. It brought back memories of the evenings we spent watching vintage sitcoms on the couch. He kept slipping his foot onto my side until I gave up and let him to spread out. This was the only thing that felt different. It might have been the heat. or the way the water made everything heavier and slower. Perhaps it was because his shoulders seemed to barely fit on his side of the tub. All right, I responded, moving closer. Let me see what makes this place so wonderful if you're not relocating. I instantly felt bad about switching seats. The jets strike the legs, shoulders, and lower back in all the proper places. He looked at me as though he was fully aware of what he had sacrificed. He took another taste and remarked, told you. Now you won't get it back. Do you want a wager? I leaned in to pretend to take his arm, but he laughed and withdrew. Joao Lucas, I knew it. I was grabbing at his arm and he was swatting my hands away and we were grappling with water splashing over the sides. Okay, he murmured, protecting his drink with his hand. Raphael Prevail? Please take a seat. I murmured, grateful, and instinctively sunk into his lap. The giggling ceased. The atmosphere changed. I sensed it. Instantly, the subtle tightness in his body, the stiffness pressing against me. Despite my heart thumping, I remained motionless. He didn't either. It wasn't anything, I assured myself. Water, heat, and too much intimacy. It was just that. As I moved in an attempt to settle in, I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. It became more apparent the more I moved. I'm sorry, he replied abruptly. His voice was tremulous and low. I didn't intend to. Everything is all right. I interrupted, attempting to sound informal. Just the jets. Calm down. He didn't appear at ease. He was unable to look me in the eyes because his face was crimson. A glimmer of remorse crossed my face, but it was accompanied by something more. Excitement. The way he stared at me back then pleased me. Uncertain and anxious. As if I possessed a power I was unaware of until that very moment. I broke the stillness by saying, Raphael, no, if you had just returned my seat, this wouldn't have happened. The tension subsided as he laughed, yet it remained. Muttering that he needed more drink, he slipped out from under me and got out of the tub. My eyes trailed lower than they should have as I watched him leave. And I blew out a trembling breath when he vanished inside. What was that? With my body still vibrating, I leaned back against the edge. It might have been innocuous. Or perhaps it wasn't. In any case, I kept thinking about it. I felt alive when I saw how he felt beneath me and how his eyes enlarged before he turned away. The moment had gone by the time he returned outside, but my thoughts had not. I continued playing it again, wondering about it. I wondered if it was something else totally or if it was as innocent as I had persuaded myself. I appreciate you sticking with me if you've read this far. I appreciate you taking the time to listen even though I realize this hasn't been the most pleasant story to hear. Please take a time to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you find this video interesting or if you believe that someone could identify with what I'm presenting. It reassures me that I'm not alone in this and truly encourages me to continue sharing experiences like these. Now let's return to it. It wasn't anything, I assured myself. A strange moment. Drinks, heat, and spending too much time in a small tub. It was just that. I woke up the following morning and mentally reenacted it. He seemed anxious, ashamed, and possibly something else based on the way he looked at me. And how I was interested, flattered, and giddy. I was not going to make fun of him. Not initially. The thought persisted, luring me in. It began modestly. While I was preparing breakfast, I was only wearing a tank top without a bra. I saw him gazing, but he remained silent. I got a thrill from a fleeting gaze that was almost perceptible. That excitement became a habit. Sweatpants were swapped out for leggings. Hoodies were swapped out for low-cut tops. I stretched more when I knew he was looking, leaned over more to pick things up, and looked for excuses to pass him a bit too closely. It was innocuous, I told myself. Only a game. My enjoyment of it increased as I played more. By the time Christmas arrived, everything had changed. Between us, the air was charged and heavy. The clothes and looks were no longer the only things that mattered. The jokes were the cause. The way he responded to my taunts. Just enough pressure to see how far I could push it. One evening, while I was leaning over the sofa wearing a tank top and leggings, he said, caring mom. Raphael will brighten someone's day. Oh, please, I rolled my eyes and shot back. Raphael would think that after 20 years you would be accustomed to me. I'm not blind, though. I was stopped by that. He spoke so nonchalantly as if it were insignificant. It was. Joao Lucas, he could see my face. I turned aside as my stomach flipped. One evening after supper, the hot tub reopened. This time, I didn't even need to inquire. Joao Lucas, I could speak. He snatched towels and drinks. I waited for him outside wearing a pink bikini that was smaller than the one I had on the previous occasion. His eyes briefly flicked down when he stepped in. Christian, that was enough to bring a grin to my face. He handed me my drink and said, Jesus, Mom. That thing is about to fall out of you. Oh, halt. As I sank into the sea, I chuckled. I don't want to cause you any trauma. Believe me, it would be more traumatic for you. The words lingered, more substantial than the steam emanating from the lake. He and I both refrained from pushing. There was a pulsating tension between us. When I made a joke about exchanging seats once more, he shut it down right away. No way, he said. Not after the previous instance. How did it go the last time? I tilted my head, impressed. He said, his cheeks flushed, as you know. Mini-me choosing to attend the celebration. Perhaps I laughed a bit too much. I feel flattered. He became much more irate, so I dropped it. I had the same excitement once more when he climbed out and I was able to see him through his damp shorts. I came up with another reason to push things after Christmas. I had ordered a sauna for myself as a present. Fernando volunteered to set it up and I made sure to watch him closely. Watching him tighten screws while wearing a crop top and shorts, I stood in the doorway resting on the frame. I traced my fingers down Mr. Handyman's arm and whispered, "Oh, mister, how am I ever going to pay you back?" He dismissed it with a laugh, but I could see his gaze flicker to my legs before returning to the directions. I backed away after letting it hang there for a short while. I asked him if he wanted to try it out with me once he completed making it the following day. I told him, "Come on, you built it, you should at least enjoy it." After he hesitated. That worked. I wore a tank top without a bra and shorts. Just enough to continue the game. He looked more like a man than the boy I reared when he arrived wearing gym shorts and no shirt. My pulse quickened as we crammed ourselves into the sauna, sitting so close that our legs touched. I leaned back and said, "Raphael, you've done such a great job in here. Are you certain I can't do anything else?" "I do have a big problem that you could take care of," he added with a smile. Unexpectedly, I blinked, but he waved it away before I could respond. I was joking. "Oh, I believed our guest had returned." I taunted him by looking at his shorts. For a brief while, his gaze shifted to my chest, causing my skin to prickle. Raphael not alone, though, in having guests. As my nipples pressed against the thin fabric, he fired back a nod. Grinning, I thrust my chest forward. After a workout, it's normal. The moment was broken when the timer sounded. He got up first, and when we stepped outside, I brushed up against him. He remained in place. "Perhaps we can work out together next time," he remarked with a smile. Though the words felt heavier than they should have, I would still love to have responded. That night, I was uneasy when I went to sleep. I wanted to test how far I could push before anything broke, but I also wanted to stop, draw a line, and return to normal. I didn't intend to bring it up, at least not in the manner that it transpired, but after everything, including the stares that teased the sauna, neither he nor I could ignore it any longer. Began in the kitchen. Still wearing my shorts and tank top after my morning workout, I was washing dishes. I felt Fernando's fingers brush my lower back as he grabbed for a glass as he approached me from behind. There was just enough pressure to convince me that it wasn't a coincidence. Heat rushed to my face as I froze for a half second, but I didn't draw away. He smirked and nodded to my chest, saying, "Your headlights are on." "Oh, you saw?" I shot back, attempting to maintain a steady voice. "It's difficult not to." It happened at that moment. After he paused as if he was trying to think of the perfect words, he questioned in a casual but unofficial manner what he was permitted to say. Which things were fine and which weren't. The air in the room seemed to have been drawn out. I could no longer act as though this was all in my brain because he was requesting permission to test the waters. I said, "Words don't matter," at last. "Raphael can say anything you want. We'll just call it a terrible joke and move on if something goes too far." He appeared both anxious and relieved. I pushed a little harder since I could tell his mind was racing. "How about a little physical contact?" I inquired. "Why is that acceptable?" He stopped and swallowed hard. "I'm not sure. I don't mind having hands on my butt," I responded, looking him in the eyes as only if I could reciprocate. Despite his anxious and sharp chuckle, he nodded. "Deal." I reassured myself that it was harmless. A foolish pact between two individuals who had always been close. Christian that didn't feel like the weight of the moment. I pretended that I didn't feel his eyes on me as I returned my attention to the dishes, but my stomach flipped. We tested it in a short period of time. His fingers brushed across my hip when I was loading the dishes later that evening. Swift but methodical. Startled, I straightened up and ran into him. He didn't retreat. Rather, he applied just enough pressure for me to feel him, and I gazed up at him, my eyes wide. "Someone is feeling brave," because I spoke in a lower voice than I intended. He shot back, but his face was crimson, as you indicated, as it is. The burning persisted even after I turned away with a chuckle. Not even after he went out to hang out with some pals. I went through my closet that evening and took out dresses, skirts, and shirts that I hadn't worn in years. I wanted him to see. I wanted to keep going. That's exactly what I did the next morning. I wore a blouse without a bra and one of my shortest skirts when I arrived downstairs. Only enough buttons are undone to let the imagination run wild. He was still wearing his boxers as he entered the kitchen, and his mouth actually fell open when he turned around. "Is that for me?" he asked in jest, yet he continued to stare. I thought I should dress like you, so I stepped closer and taunted. He smiled, but I noticed a change in his eyes. He had stopped making jokes. I leaned into it just enough to let him know I loved it when he brushed his palm across my lower back as he passed. More of the same minor details, lingering glances, and remarks that teetered on the brink of what we both knew was too much occurred throughout the course of the following few days. He became braver and I followed suit. One night, after I stooped to pick up something from the floor, he exclaimed, "Raphael Re going to get me in trouble." I shot back, straightening up and looking at him, thinking maybe I want to. He cautioned, but it didn't sound like he was being careful. It sounded enthusiastic. By the end of the week, it had evolved beyond simple remarks or unintentional touches. When there was plenty of room, they brushed past each other in corridors with hugs that lasted too long. Every time he reached around me to retrieve something, his hands lingered on my hips, and I experienced the same surge of excitement, heat, and curiosity that left me wanting more. We consistently retreated. We would make a joke, laugh it off, and act as if nothing had occurred. I believed that we were both afraid of what it might become if we didn't stop. Neither of us desired to halt. Not quite yet. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch feigning to watch television, he confessed, "I don't know what's happening." I didn't say either. It feels nice." "Indeed," he said, gazing at the screen without the ability to see it well. "Yes, it does." We didn't make any decisions or pledges. Simply an unwritten commitment to continue tormenting and see where it would take you. Even though I vowed to make things lighthearted, I couldn't help but worry how long we could wait. It didn't occur to me that evening. Perhaps it was hard to stop because it wasn't intended. The two of us were sitting alone in the living room. Although the television was on, neither of us was paying much attention. He was idly making circles on my ankle as my legs were stretched out and resting on his lap. We had sat in that position before, but this time it felt different. He wasn't being playful or jesting. I wasn't either. Although neither of us spoke, I could feel the tension becoming heavy and thick. Not until the silence was broken by Fernando's final exhale. "I don't understand," he murmured softly. "What do you get?" Even though I already knew this, I still asked. "I'm terrified because I don't understand what's going on." I sat up and drew my legs back to look at him. He didn't give me a look. He was staring at the ground. His hands seemed to be trying to balance himself as they gripped his knees. "I admitted others except you." My voice was just a whisper, but it sounded excessively loud. "I've also been attempting to solve it." There was something raw in his eyes as he finally turned to face me. My gut twisted at something. "I'm not alone, am I?" he inquired. I'm not dreaming." "No," I answered. "Raphael Re not." It was harsher this time, but we sat in that quiet once more. It seemed risky, as if one incorrect word would bring everything to a head. I should have laughed it off and shifted the topic at that point, but I was unable to do so. I had no desire to. He ran his hand through his hair and remarked, "I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I don't know every time I see you. I can't get it off my mind. Regarding you." My breath caught and I was unable to speak for a while, but before I could stop myself, the words spilled out. "I said it again, and you're not alone. For me, it has been the same." He seemed surprised that I said it aloud, as evidenced by the widening of his eyes. Heck, I didn't think I would say it aloud, but once I did, I couldn't take it back. He said, "I don't know what to do with it." He spoke more quietly now. "It's making my head hurt. I feel like I need to get out of the room half the time just to get my mind off of you in the other half." I understood exactly what he meant when he faded off. I was certain he could hear my heart thumping so loudly and my skin burning. We couldn't continue doing this, so I should have urged him to stop, but I didn't. Instead, I stated that it also frightens me. I was afraid to continue the thought, but I couldn't lie to myself or to him. I confess that it gives me a sense of life. The words lingered and none of us said anything for a while. Fernando then relaxed and rested his head on the couch. "Godmother." After running his hands down his face, he turned back to face me. "Why are we doing this? I don't want to stop, but I'm not sure if I stated that honestly." All I could offer him was the truth, but he looked at me as if he was looking for approval or confirmation that he wasn't crazy. I added quietly, "We'll keep it light, as we had previously discussed. There would be no real expectations, and if things got out of hand, we would quit." He nodded, but if I were being completely honest, I could still see the tension in his eyes. I needed this for the time being, but I wasn't sure how long we could pretend it was just a joke. I needed the way he made me feel and the way he looked at me. He abruptly sprang up and ran a hand through his hair, saying I should go to bed. Yes, I said, but neither of us took any action. When he eventually went, I was left alone to question if our relationship was already too far gone. He remained for a brief moment longer as if he was waiting for me to stop him, but I didn't. That night, I didn't get any sleep. I kept turning and reliving the talk until the edges became hazy. A part of me felt relieved that everything was now public knowledge, while another part felt even more burdened. Even if it was just in my mind, I had crossed a line and I had no idea how to get back on track. Fernando was in the kitchen when I woke up the following morning. Standing at the counter with a cup of coffee, he was already dressed. When I entered, he looked up, and although we didn't speak for a while, there wasn't any tension like there had been the previous evening. Simply be silent. His voice was lower than normal when he said, "Good morning." "Good morning." In an attempt to stabilize my hand, I picked up a mug and filled it. My heart raced because I could feel him observing me, but I chose not to show it this time. Not now. He started about yesterday night, but I interrupted him. "We must speak." I put my cup down and turned to face him, but we must also be honest with ourselves. Although he nodded, he appeared apprehensive, as if he was uncertain of my next words. To be honest, I wasn't sure either, but I knew we couldn't continue to act as like nothing was going on. That much was obvious. I said, "I can't let you go." "Regardless." "Raphael won't," he answered, advancing rapidly. "I promise." "Christian, whatever this is, we can't continue." Even if my voice faltered, I persisted. "I can't allow it to get to the point where we are unable to recover from it, since it is interfering with us both." "What then do we do?" His voice cracked just enough to make my heart hurt as he asked. "We establish limits. This time, real ones." I forced myself to maintain eye contact while I swallowed hard. "Don't touch anymore. No more making fun of others. And we both speak up if we begin to feel like we're going too far. At that moment, don't dismiss it." He nodded slowly, but his eyes were hesitant, and I could see it. Whatever it was between us, he didn't want to let it go. Additionally, a part of me didn't. I knew we had to, though. And run after it. I softly squeezed his hand as I reached for it. "I want you to know that this is unrelated to my feelings for you. I feel alive because of you. Observed. And I will always remember that. Christian, I can't get that feeling again like this. Beyond this place, I have to discover what's lacking from my life. Outside of ourselves." His shoulders loosened somewhat, and I saw the son I reared for the first time in days. The person who had faith in me, looked up to me and leaned on me. Not the man who had been staring at me as if I were a stranger. He squeezed my hand back and whispered, "I understand. I have the same sentiments." Simply put, I was at a loss for words. I truly meant it when I said, "We'll be all right. We must ensure that it remains that way." Then he drew me into a familiar, strong hug. Similar to every previous one. Something felt different when he withdrew. Lighter. As if the stress that had been holding us back for weeks had finally been released. He went to see some pals later. I took a close look at myself as I stood in front of the mirror. Not only my physique, but everything else as well. The tenderness of my gaze. How my hair cascaded over my shoulders. The way, even without makeup, my skin looked to gleam. I felt gorgeous for the first time in years. Ideal. And Fernando had nothing to do with it. Not at all. He had reminded me of what it was like to be seen, which was why. At the time, I made a self-promise to keep that sensation going. I would figure out how to keep it going. Through new relationships when I was ready, new experiences, and new people. He wouldn't be the conduit, though. It isn't possible. Later that evening, Fernando returned home and we resumed our relaxed dinner TV chat. And it seemed effortless once more for the first time. Cozy. As if we had returned to one another. Even if anything had been lost in the process. Even so, I kept thinking about what may have happened as I laid in bed that night. What if we allowed it to continue? What if we had gone too far? And what would happen if my curiosity never truly went away? I know it's complicated, but I'm not sure where this leads me. I'm sharing this for that reason. Perhaps there is someone out there with knowledge I haven't considered. I'd really like to know what you think if you've experienced this or know someone who has. Being in the middle of something can sometimes make it difficult to see properly. Let this serve as a reminder at the very least. Loneliness has the power to take you in unexpected directions. Joao Lucas, you cross a line you can't get back from. Pay attention. I appreciate you listening to me. Feel free to express your opinions. They are important. If you enjoyed the story, please give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Muse Tales for more emotional stories.